All right, this is the first interview from Launders Lan number 2. Marky, get the bag, Mark. How are you doing, good sir?
I'm doing excellent, Scott. It's great to be interviewed.
The first interview here. It's going to go great. I want to start something off just because it's the start of the new year.
Awesome.
What is your New Year's resolution for Counter-Strike?
Oh, I think so. Like my mini New Year's resolution was like to post on Twitter more. Like that's actually what the first thing that was that come to my mind. But like I don't know, man. It's been a crazy last year. Just like continue on with the good vibes. Like it ended well. So Frag 18 was the last event I did, and that was a lot of fun. But here we are now in Toronto.
Hell yeah, hell yeah. All right, well, I'm gonna get my questions here. I am gonna actually start on kind of that area. So this is your first event in Canada. I know we were talking earlier. This isn't your first time in Canada. It's your first event in Canada. How are you enjoying the atmosphere so far? And bear in mind, we haven't really gotten started yet, but how has the atmosphere with everybody here so far been?
I mean, just walking in, I mean, this is the same place that it was previously for the technically second Launders Lan, but we're at that same location. I can tell that everything just kind of like for everybody seems very familiar, but you know, for me, like prepping for the event and getting ready for the teams, there's a lot of faces that I haven't seen. So when I was actually a player, I played on a couple of teams with like majority like Canadian players. So I've gotten to meet people like Drop and a lot of friends like that. And like even my dad told me before I came, my dad grew up in Quebec, that I was raised like a good Canadian boy. So I honestly, I do feel kind of at home here. Toronto is probably the coolest city I've ever been to. Like, I gotta say, it's sick, man. It's sick.
I'm glad to hear
like,
that.
The environment outside of the LAN is, like, pretty phenomenal. Yeah. You know what I mean? I've really been enjoying. Yesterday, we got to walk around Toronto, and it was really cool.
Amazing. Well, you know, speaking of LANs and everything like that, you spent a lot of time last year both casting CCT and various Fragadelphias around the contiguous United States.
Yeah.
How has that helped you grow as a caster and making those connections within the scene that you mentioned?
So, you know me, right? Whenever I was coming into those frags, I joined LCA literally a year before exactly that first Fragadelphia Chicago 2023. And now I'm on, you know, this is me finishing up my year 2 of casting. So like for that first year, I really got to build up like the experience casting a lot of the players that like I'd already been kind of like playing against and like seen in advance for a long time. But like that first time coming out to frag and like being able to just like see all those players, like I don't know, that first time I went to frags, it was so natural. Like, it was just seeing everybody. And that's what I'm saying as well. Like, coming up here, it's a brand new set of faces, which was really cool. But, I mean, coming to frag, I mean, working with, you know, people like Sasquatch, NVS, but also at the beginning, Mr. Bach, Mark, was just, like, an extremely, like, valuable experience for me. And I mean, I remember kind of worrying about it before. Like, I talked to Vincent. I'm like, how do I even act on camera? You know, and he's like, you're overthinking it. Like, you're gonna be fine. And I mean, that's probably one of the like greatest weekends of my life. You know, I mean, after that, like, I was like, I can't believe I just casted a LAN. Like, that's something I wanted to do my whole life. And now I've casted 5, and this is 6.
Amazing. Well, actually, going on that, so. What do you enjoy about the LAN culture that has started to pop up in the intervening years since we had COVID and kind of a lot of shutdowns that came through? What has that culture meant to you?
I think it means a whole lot to me. So I've been playing Counter-Strike since like 2016. You know, have had some on and off. Like during my junior year of high school, I think I stopped playing, but that was during the second semester got affected by COVID. So that summer, I like rebought my ESCA account, really started to get back into it, and then fast forward to like sort of the beginning to the end of the pandemic, like when we were having LANs come back. The first LAN actually that came back, right, was St. Louis, Fragadelphia, St. Louis, and that's my hometown. So actually being able to come there and just like be a part of the community for the first time was super sick. It was super cool. And like I went to, I think, Newark after that. I went to Fragacago, the original one they had. It's been really cool. And obviously, you know, besides the pandemic, there were things that happened with Nerd Street and a lot of changes with Frag. And so sort of stepping from like that player to the caster and sort of seeing like the change of regime. You know, I grew up watching competitive Call of Duty. and a lot of smaller gaming tournaments, like, you know, what MLG was putting on at the time, and organizers like UMG, kind of just like setting up tournaments in like locations like this, like a wedding warehouse, in a hotel, right? And like these smaller LANs that I get to cast and be emotionally attached to, because these are guys that I see online, and they're guys that I've been following their story, even from when I was a player, right? I think that those experiences, like, it's really cool. I feel like I'm sort of having my own experience of what I watched when I was growing up, of sort of these more local LANs now. And I think that, like, the feeling that comes around this, especially casting it, there's, like, authentically, I don't think there's anything better out there in NA. I mean, it's easy to say that, but I mean, you know, what we got definitely can challenge over to Epic Lan. Right?
Amazing. Yeah, no, for sure. Just a few more questions for you then. With being the busy schedule coming up with events and everything, Valve points, all that, we know what the events are coming up. Right. How are you balancing all of those events that are potentially on your plate coming forward with that for the 2025 season?
So I think that this year, especially like literally looking a year ago in January, it was like February where I started like getting into some of my first events, really getting hired for whatever it was, Bet Boom. Later on in the summer was CCT. And we obviously did some Marvel Rivals stuff, the two of us, early in the spring and then into the summer. So I had a bit of a busy 2024, and one that, you know, I think at the start of the year when I was just casting my first frag and stuff like that, I didn't really expect to have. But I mean, for, you know, getting like to like live the dream of like, you know, that first experience, I think it was in March, I got hired for the Bet Boom tournament. And I mean, I was casting organizations like Fnatic, right? Maybe like the tier 2 EU team we know now, but there were a lot of big teams, you know, kind of playing in those, getting to cast with Vincent. Like I remember it was my friend's birthday and we were gonna go visit down in my buddy's college town, but I had to take that off. And I mean, I'm like, guys, I'm sorry, I can't come hang out. I'm literally like, I'm doing what I've always wanted to do, you know what I mean? And then having the opportunity to come work in CCT was like at the beginning of the summer, I was approached to come on to a trial, and now I'm, you know, part of the regular free agent CCT space. You know, that's a crazy, right? There's EU events, South American events happening all the time. NA had 3 events there. And, you know, the ball kept rolling, and, you know, there was some burnout there. But I think that for how much was coming at me, I couldn't really stop. And so I think that I've sort of gotten used to the busy schedule a little bit, just kind of like thriving within the chaos is something that I don't, you know, you talk about esports all the time, and it sounds silly to the average viewer how, you know, busy schedules can maybe block up a team success or whatever it is. But that's why I mentioned burnout. I talk to casters about this a lot, right? Like you yourself, right? You're a coach and you're a writer, right? Like when I get off the cast, I probably like to, you know, go hop and watch a TV show or like, you know, play games with my friends. But then I'm like, boys, we have to get off of CS. Like, let's do something else. But like, I think during the year that I'm looking forward to, I mean, you know, my very first experience kind of really being within this has prepared me for what looks to be a very hectic year. We're sort of, you know, I'm getting some, we're getting some availability sorted out for what's to come. But I mean, hey man, you know, experiences like Launders Lan and Fragadelphia have certainly made it more possible for me to be involved in what's going on this year. And I'm really excited to tackle that with hopefully everything I'm ready for. You know what I mean?
All right. Well, the last question I've got for you then.
I like to yap.
Yeah, I know, I do.
Awesome job.
With it being Launders Lan 2, last year, Lake was here.
Yeah.
Soon after, Science to M80. He's now a big hotshot. He was mentioned by Mobs as, you know, player to look out for. I don't know if you know many people around here, but who are you kind of keeping an eye on early on as that next kind of player that will go from Launders Lan to hitting the big scene and being a well-known player throughout all of Counter-Strike? So we have NRG here, right? I don't want to be that guy today. I think that George got the shout out from Elige. I think that was very excellent. I think that there's a lot of hopes around that player, but unfortunately Downs dropped out of the tournament as well due to Nyx and Co. that happening with those rosters, which I'm so excited to see him on Complexity and obviously the new Nouns roster. I don't want to pick from those big dogs is what I'm trying to say. This Team Horse roster is one that, I mean, I'm a little bit biased. I think I really like Dylan and the boys. I think Misha's really awesome.
awesome. But particularly coming out of that squad is a guy that, a dear friend of ours, Why Not FPS, he was the general manager of Detonate and brought in Raytix to briefly join that roster and then was poached to LAG, right, in their sort of crazy mid-ECL mix. So he's a guy that, I mean, I'll even shout out Tony again. I think even we were talking to Launders, right, like he was here at the last event. He was a guy that put me on Lake. And so I've heard Tony as a general manager sort of talk up this Raytix guy and what I've gotten to see to him. This is a player I think everybody should be aware of watching in this event.
So Raytix is the...
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us. The first interview of Launders Lan. I don't know when this is going to come out. We'll figure that out later. But thank you so much for all the help. That's going to be it for this interview. Bye for now.